All right, we are live with my boy Clark Raymond, man. Clark Raymond, what's going on, bud?
What's up, Cliff?
Welcome to the Blended Lines interview, man. First, I just want to tell you thank you, man, for taking time out to do this interview. With you being a ex-police officer, I thought it would be good to get like an ex-police officer's mentality on like where we are right now as far as the climate that we're in, with police brutality and racial injustice and all of that stuff. Now, for people who don't know, you and I go way back, man, way back to elementary school. So for everybody who doesn't know, man, like Clark has just always been like just a real guy, honest guy. Uh, he's never been a racist person. I mean, I can vouch for that. He's been like my best friend since like sixth grade. And one thing I've always respected about him is just how genuine he is. And he's not fake like myself. So I know one of the members in Blended Lines actually sent me a message and was like, look, if you could get like someone that's a police officer or was a police officer in an interview, that'd be great. And then, when I told my wife, she mentioned you. And so here we are, man. But look, I appreciate the time. So before we get started, man, just go ahead and tell everybody about yourself. I know you're not in Blended Lines because you're not on Facebook. Because otherwise I'd be like, what led you to Blended Lines? But just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I grew up in, of course, the west side of Jefferson County there with you in Forestdale, and
Yep.
grew up in a diverse community, average family, middle class family, great family. Had a great, a great upbringing.
Yeah.
A lot of good friends, and I guess kind of what led me into law enforcement. It wasn't a lifelong dream of mine. I wasn't a little kid that always wanted to be a policeman or nothing like that.
Uh-huh.
I actually, out of high school, I actually wanted to go into the fire service, to be a fireman, and
Yeah.
went to paramedic school and all that stuff. And then at the time of me getting out of paramedic school, the fire test or whatever back then, the civil service test,
Mm.
it got delayed for whatever reason. It was like in a hold up for a couple of years. And a friend of mine who actually went to high school with us, a few years older than us,
Mm.
became a police officer with the city of Birmingham, and told me how great the job was and great
Mm.
benefits, and that's what led me to take the police test and ultimately get hired with the city of Birmingham initially.
Okay. So how long did you work in the Birmingham city
I
precinct?
worked at North Precinct, North Birmingham. I worked there for from
Ooh,
2000 to 2005.
that's the hood. What's good in the hood? I know all
It,
about Birmingham. Didn't you do
yeah,
college too?
I did. When I initially got hired, I was 21 years old, so I was young,
Right.
and I started. Yeah, they put me in North Precinct, and at the city of Birmingham and I'm sure things have changed since then. It's been 20 years, but you went on a 16-week training car program. So once you came out of the police academy, which was 6 months, you went to your assigned precinct, and you were assigned to a shift, and you were put with a training officer for 8 weeks on one shift and 8 weeks on a different shift. And I
Mm.
started off on evening shift, where I trained in Collegeville, and then in Norwood up in that area.
And for anybody who doesn't know, man, Collegeville is no joke. All right. It's like hood. So just to kind of give you a reference there. So, and I remember that, man. I think I had ran into you one day, and we hadn't seen each other since like high school, and you was telling me that, and that you were, a police officer over in Collegeville, and that just kind of blew my mind. Like, what? So I know after Birmingham is when you went to Hoover Police, right?
I did. I left Birmingham in 2005. I want to say it was like March of '05,
Mm-hmm.
and went to Hoover and spent 10 years at Hoover. Yes.
Okay. Um, when you were in the Birmingham precinct, Man, talk about, because okay, so for everybody, this is how I'm looking at it. Birmingham, and for people who are not from Birmingham or Alabama, the Birmingham precinct, uh, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Birmingham is mostly predominantly black area that's patrolled, right? By the
North
police.
Precinct, yes. North Precinct, yes, but I'm African American, correct.
Okay. And then Hoover, everybody knows Hoover, and we will say that that's maybe predominantly white area. Is that
I,
safe to
I,
say?
I would say that's a good guess, yes.
Okay. So when you were in the Birmingham precinct, uh, just tell us, like, what were some day-to-day things that you would experience just being a police officer? I mean, talk about the good and the bad.
Well, being brand new to the job,
Uh-huh.
never really had a lifelong aspiration of being a policeman, had no family members as policemen, not really knowing exactly, how it was going to be. The first day, I can just remember feeling like I was in a costume, like I was, like it was Halloween or something, just because it didn't feel, it wasn't normal for me. And I can just remember my first day. I was very fortunate on both of my 16 weeks to be placed with training officers who had a lot of tenure, who were excellent communicators,
Mm-hmm.
and who actually grew up in the inner city. So I was placed with those guys, and I give them a lot of credit just for the way that I started my career and how I ended it. I was very
Mm-hmm.
successful. So that was a big part of my career there early on. But yeah, Collegeville, my very first day, call after call after call. And, I'm 21 years old, not married, no kids,
Right.
going to a domestic violence situation, trying to tell two grown people how to, separate and stop their marriage from, falling apart. Me telling somebody that
Right.
at 21. So, I can just remember those first few weeks were difficult,
Right.
just to me starting the job, and seeing a lot of things that I never knew existed, because a lot of things that go on, and not just in Birmingham, but everywhere, you don't hear about it every day.
Right.
All the disruptions, all the stuff that law enforcement actually does deal with, and I can
Mm-hmm.
just remember my second day on the job, going to my first homicide.
Mm-hmm.
So it started to getting real, in a hurry.
Right.
So I started to mature very quickly, at that young age, and like I said, I had a lot of good people who trained me,
Mm-hmm.
um, to teach me to do things the right way early on.
That's good, man. And I mean, I keep it real in my interviews, man, and in my group. And
Yeah.
was it uncomfortable with you being white going into a predominantly black area that's considered like the hood?
It wasn't, and that's straight truth. It really wasn't, and I don't know. Like I said, I grew up in a diverse community, as you
Right.
know, and
Right.
we didn't grow up in the hood necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but we went to high school and elementary school and junior high school with many different aspects. I mean, diverse people my whole life,
Mm-hmm.
and I just remember as a kid, we would go shopping over in Five Points West. Like I don't, like to me, nothing. I just remember those Parisians, used to be over there. I mean, nothing, nothing really. No, it didn't. Like going into people's homes, I never felt uncomfortable. Um, but there was some bad days, that
Uh-huh.
I had, of course, and because I was white and I was in law enforcement. But I'm gonna tell you, Cliff, the key to my success there and
Mm-hmm.
in Hoover and everywhere else is communication. I mean, that's the key to it all. I mean, straightforward. How you talk to people is what you're going to get in return. Now, does that work every single time I got into a confrontation with somebody, or I was called to end the confrontation? No, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't work every time.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the time, the way that I approach people and the way that I talk to people got me a long way,
Mm-hmm.
just in my job. No complaints ever, 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
always, try to do what was right. but yeah, I mean, there were plenty of times that because of my color, it was difficult. I've been
Mhm.
called every name in the book, early on, but as in law enforcement, the police academy at Birmingham
Mhm.
was great. We had good leadership there, and there's just that fine line that as a law enforcement versus a regular citizen. If somebody were to approach you on the street, and, with your family and shove you down, you
Mhm.
know, there's a lot of inside, that you're going to have to control, right?
Right.
Whether you jump on the guy or run or fight or flight. Well, in law enforcement, you have to know how to manage that.
Right.
And, when somebody were to push me down, I have to think fast. In law enforcement, you
Mhm.
have to think fast. You've got to think critical. You've got to be smart.
Mhm.
That's where training comes in. That's where, my training officers, the academy, that's where things started to, how I was brought through the process, I think
Mhm.
helped me out in that aspect.
No, dude, I 100% agree with you on the communication part, man, which is why Blended Lines was even started. Was I just got after George Floyd, man, and you know me, Clark, like I've always been kind of like a jovial person, caring person, friend to everybody. I haven't been racist or anything like that. And it's a nice guy, probably too much of a people pleaser at some point. But after George Floyd got murdered, man, I just remember for 2 weeks I was just like pissed. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't like feeling that way.
Right.
Um, and so I created Blended Lines because I saw an opportunity to create a safe place where people of all races can come together and get educated. And that was the whole purpose behind it, man, was education. Because I felt like you, I was like, man, the issue is people just don't understand, or they're not educated on the other race. And so I started it on the whim. Long story short, man, in less than a month, we're almost at 1,000 people.
That's awesome. Right.
Yeah, all races, white, black, Asian, and you name it. And the beauty of it is that we talk about everything, man. The controversial stuff, the stuff that you can't go on your regular Facebook page and talk about without getting blasted. We talk about it in Blended Lines, and so that's the beauty of it. So that's a good segue into the George Floyd, man. After the George Floyd murder, what was your take on it, man? Like, give me your mentality with you being an ex-cop, and a dad, you know what I'm saying, and a husband. What was your perspective after that incident?
Well, in my law enforcement career, this wasn't really the first time that something this tragic has happened. It's
I'm glad
you
you
know
said that, man.
multiple incidents, right?
Right, right.
Um, and my first, I remember getting the video via text somebody had sent me, and it was extremely disturbing, right? Um, it was extremely disturbing, and you know, the broad picture of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I knew personally that this was going to affect many people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the anger, the tensions,
Mm-hmm.
but I also knew that it was going to affect my fellow law enforcement, brothers, if you want to say that. Um, how their job, because I can tell you for a fact, at the city of Birmingham and Hoover, where I worked both places,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you for a fact that I don't know the exact percentage, but the majority of law enforcement officers, 99%,
Mm-hmm.
were disturbed by it,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that they were going to have to pay the price for someone's ignorance, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Um, because nobody wants to see that happen,
Right.
and everybody felt the same way you felt.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that majority of America felt watching this video.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does.
Um, you know, and I knew that was going to be a issue too. So.
Yeah. And so I have some group members in here asking questions, man. So one question that we have up is what do you feel about training in how to restrain people?
So over the years, that's changed quite a bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've been out of law enforcement for about 5 years, and I don't know the current trends or the training. I'm not sure exactly what's being taught now, but
Mm-hmm.
over the years, when I first started, there was a certain type of technique you would use, and then as the years went by, that something else was brought in.
Mm-hmm.
And the restraining techniques, in the police academy when I was there, you were always taught to do, one thing higher than what was being done. So
Mm-hmm.
I know lately you've seen a lot. Tasers were introduced right as my career was when I was kind of leaving Birmingham. So that was probably '04, '05 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I guess, a new tool that they had provided law enforcement, because prior to that, if you became in an altercation with a person and they were combative, or they would not comply with whatever you were asking them to do,
Mm-hmm.
then your first step was usually pepper spray, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the taser, when the taser was introduced, it was kind of introduced on the same lines as that.
Uh-huh.
um, so I mean, you just kind of kept, as the confrontation kept moving up, you had to move up, always one above the person you were talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So that the technique, I mean, there's so many different ways. I can't really explain a certain technique. I mean, it just depends on the situation, that you're involved in at the
Mm-hmm.
time. I mean, it could be a verbal confrontation, or it could be a, physical confrontation. I mean, there's just so many different, I guess restraining. I don't know exactly what she's actually wanting out of that, but
Right. Well, it kind
I
of
guess what
leads
she's talking about, maybe.
yeah, she's talking about like
Go ahead.
what kind of leads into another question that Stephanie asked was how are you trained as far as getting a situation under control? Like how
Well,
are you trained to de-escalate a situation, I guess.
first communication, right?
Right,
You want to communicate with the person,
right,
um, and many times, it depends on the type of situation there too. Is the person, some mentally incapacitated of some sort?
right.
Or are they drunk?
Yeah.
Are they on some sort of medication, some sort of illegal
Right.
drug?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of circumstances there too. But in a normal situation, you would hope that your communication skills, the way that you verbally talk to this person, they'll comply with whatever you're asking them to do, and then there won't be a need to restrain.
Right.
Um, but if something led to that, um, you know, I guess as far as getting somebody under control, I mean, it's just kind of there's, like I said, are you in a physical confrontation with them? I mean, if you're rolling around on the ground with somebody in a physical confrontation,
Hmm.
you just kind of do what you have to do to try to get them subdued, restrained.
Right.
But there's so many different, I mean, there's really so many different things that could possibly happen. There's
Right.
no certain technique, um, that you would use, as far as, there are handcuffing techniques,
Right.
but that would be in a perfect scenario.
Right.
I mean, if somebody was laying on the ground and complying,
Right.
that would be when that technique was used. But in an altercation, man, it's just kind of, however you can get it done,
Yeah. I mean,
but
that's a good perspective, man, because I think people fail to realize that there are so many other things that contribute to the situation. Like you said, drugs, a person's mental state, are they pissed off? Are they intoxicated? Are they on a drug, medication? Um, because that's another reason, like in this environment that we're in, man, and you spoke on it. Um, there's a lot of good cops out there. You know that. I mean,
very
hell,
good.
I
Yes.
used to brag on you all the time, man, when you were a cop and was like, look, even if I was around my homeboys or something and they was bashing cops, I was like, all of them not like that, man. Um, and right now, man, I know a lot of them are probably going to get heat because, you know, after George Floyd, it's like people are putting like all, you know, some people are putting cops into just one bag, you know, all bad guys. No, that's not the case. Another good question, man, by one of our members is, in your let's see, in your time in law enforcement, did you work with any officers who you thought were racist or would treat one race differently than others when interacting with citizens?
I personally did not. Um, I worked with at North Precinct. I'll start with Birmingham because that's where I started.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely diverse group of guys, and once I got off the training car, I was assigned to evening shift, and
Mm-hmm.
to this day, I would say the camaraderie between those guys was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that way now,
Uh-huh.
but I mean, probably half of the shift, grew up in North Birmingham or grew up in the surrounding area,
Mm-hmm.
so they still had family living there.
Okay.
Definitely not Birmingham and Hoover. If there were people of that nature, I never saw it. We
Okay.
had a, we had a diverse group there too, but it was extremely separated between. You had officers there who have never worked anywhere else in their life, and they came from college straight to Hoover.
Mm.
You had guys who had been in the military that went straight to Hoover, and you had, it's kind of a cliquish type atmosphere where you had guys like myself who came from, larger departments
Mm-hmm.
who saw a lot more and dealt with a lot more, and then moved into Hoover City, and
Mm-hmm.
and the big reason officers or myself rather
Mm-hmm.
went to Hoover at the time, was because of money.
Okay.
Obviously law enforcement doesn't pay very well, and Hoover at the time did, and
Right.
so that was kind of your goal, was to kind of obviously take care of your family and finances, and
Right.
that's
Right.
why I left Birmingham, because I mean at Birmingham I had a great career, and
Mm-hmm.
I was I had plenty of opportunities. I could have stayed and probably been promoted and moved up, and I was well
Mm-hmm.
liked there and did a great job. But end of the day, got to put food on the table, so that's why I moved. But at Hoover, no, I mean I didn't have that feeling any day I was there. No.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, was it like a big difference going from predominantly black Birmingham being a police officer to predominantly white Hoover? Like, what were some of the major differences, man, from Birmingham to Hoover,
Um.
or are there any?
Oh, there's differences, yeah, for sure.
Let's talk.
Um. Yeah. So just being upfront, I mean, I came from a precinct where I was probably answering 15 plus calls or more a shift, to maybe answering two a shift.
So from Birmingham,
When I first
15 to Hoover, two and Hoover.
to two a shift. Yeah, and
Ah,
things have changed over the years, obviously, right?
right.
I worked many different positions at Hoover. I was on patrol, and then I was a motor scout for a
Yeah,
long
you were
time.
a Boy Scout. Yeah.
Yeah. So all I did as a motor scout was work traffic accidents. I worked traffic fatalities, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Then I moved into investigations where I worked property crime, and then my last assignment there, I was in robbery homicide. So I kind of worked my way up through the chain there before leaving.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, the biggest difference, call volume. I mean, as far as traffic stops go, if there was a
Mhm.
traffic violation,
Mhm.
it's just, yes, sir, Mr. Police Officer, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And it was a little bit different as far as the atmosphere, right? I mean, um, Birmingham, North Precinct, predominantly black community,
Mhm.
um, Section 8 housing, and then you had, a lot of older individuals who lived in Collegeville who've been there their entire life. It was diverse in that aspect, but then you go to Hoover, and then you've got $1 million homes, and you've got middle class, and then you also had Section 8. So
Mhm.
it was diverse, but just
Mhm.
a different atmosphere, I guess, if that makes sense, maybe.
No, it does, man. And one thing that I'm thinking about, so I know how you grew up, and I know that you grew up in a mixed school, mixed neighborhood. I stay right down the street from you, so you've been around black people, and you're comfortable around black people. All right. Um, Do you feel like that was an advantage for you when you were working in Birmingham, being around all the, predominantly black people, and because you were already used to being around black people, do you feel like it was an advantage for you to like talk to them and know how to handle the situation, opposed to
100%.
somebody who came from like an all white?
100%. Yeah, I
Yeah.
100% agree. Yeah, I definitely. I guess the story, I was telling you at Birmingham, a lot of my coworkers there grew up in North Birmingham, and
Uh,
like I said, still have family there. So, I worked as a young new officer. I had to work weekends,
mhm.
and of course on Sundays after church, one of my coworkers' grandma lived in Collegeville. Well, they would cook Sunday dinner, So every Sunday after roll call, we go straight to grandma's,
Ooh, boy,
and yeah, oh
ooh,
yeah,
boy,
for real, yeah, no doubt.
you had that
And
real
so
black cooking.
that's right. So I mean, that's how normal, honestly, it was to me. And see, people in
Yeah.
the community, yeah, I mean, you had some bad apples. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of good people in those communities, that do appreciate law enforcement. I just remember going every single Sunday to his grandma's house. We would eat dinner, kids be playing. I mean, it was like almost like a semi-off day for me, kind of,
Right.
just kind of relax, sit back, and and hang out. And so I got to know a lot of people in that neighborhood
Mhm.
just from that aspect, which
Yeah.
in turn helped me do my job, you
Right.
know, and that comes back to communication. You
Right.
know,
Right.
they know me, I know them, they know where I stand. So that's I guess a unique story.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's so important for people to realize, and you said it, man, it's all about how you talk to people. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
If you come off as angry and upset and argumentative, you know what I'm saying? Then the individual is going to be in a defensive manner, right?
right.
So I think that's the key, man. And knowing how you are, man, is I can see you doing well in Birmingham, but what kind of concerns me is like if it's if it's an officer from like, grew up in Coleman or from a predominantly white area, and then they are going into a predominantly black area. They don't know the culture, they don't have the education, you know what I'm
Right.
saying, that you had growing up around black people. So really on both sides, you got a lack of education, and lack of education means fear, right? So it's
Yep.
already just, it can turn real ugly just from the beginning, man.
And
Um,
it all goes back to
mhm,
training. All right, it goes back to
yeah,
okay, can a person from a predominantly white area change? Absolutely,
yeah,
but it starts at home, right? How
right.
they were brought up, and the second going into law enforcement, it starts off, who is their training officer, who's training them,
Mhm,
because there were several guys that came to Birmingham that were from predominantly white areas that were successful. And, you got to have an open mind. You've got to learn. You've got to learn about people. You've got to learn about where they're from.
mhm.
But, having that training officer, having that person to guide you is very, very, very important. And like I said, when I was with the city of Birmingham, that's what
Mhm.
we had. And, also Birmingham is the guts of civil rights, right? I
Right,
mean, Birmingham is home to that. So, in the
right.
police academy, you know, I had as growing up basically in Birmingham, I've had gone to the Civil Rights Institute before. I knew what was there. We learned about it in school, but other areas may not.
Right.
And during the police academy, that was part of our academy. We went to the Civil Rights Institute, our whole academy class, and you did have people from Coleman and other areas that predominantly white that did go through that did have
Uh,
an eye opening experience. You know what I mean? That did see something that they may not have seen before. And I think that hit home to a lot of guys, and I think that's why those guys were successful because you got to learn, the history, you got to know about people, and you got to know where they're from.
that's so fascinating, man. Like I didn't know that training camp took them to the Civil Rights Museum. That's huge,
Yeah,
man.
and I don't know. That was back in 2000
Yeah.
when I went to the police academy, but I'm not sure if they still do it, and I'm sure they do. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was part of our training. You know, we went through
Mhm.
that tour, and you know, like I said, I had already gone through it just
Mhm.
because I was from there. But a lot of guys in my class were not from Birmingham,
Right.
and
Right.
you know that, and it was an eye-opening experience for them, you know, as
Yeah.
well. So
Right. That's what I was gonna say, man. I mean, I hope they still do it. Because yeah, if you've never been to the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum, man, it touches your soul, regardless of what
oh,
race
for
you
sure.
are. And I mean, it's very graphic and pictures, and yeah, it'll get to you, man. But so Amy Strickland, you remember Amy Strickland
I do,
from?
yes.
So
Hmm.
she's in here watching, and she said, what changes in training do you suggest be implemented that could help with the senseless murders that have been happening? Or do you feel like there's any additional training or anything that needs to be changed from a training perspective to prevent these murders?
So that's a big. Thank you, Amy, for the large question.
You know,
Um,
our alumni go bring it, man.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. She got me on it. So that is a very large topic. Okay, so do I think that the training that's implemented now is accurate and you know takes people in the right direction? Yes, it does.
well,
It's this is the decisions that people make. Okay, that nobody can control. Right. So
mm,
going to George Floyd, you know that officer or that law enforcement officer, he wasn't trained to put his knee on that guy's on Mr. Floyd's neck, right? I mean, that's not something that law enforcement is trained to do.
oh, so
Um,
that's not something that. And look, this is just me asking because
yeah,
I have no idea.
like I
So they
said,
train people to
in
do that.
my no people, you don't put your knee on someone's throat or neck. Okay, so that's something that you know is not taught. So you know that gentleman went outside of that officer went outside of I wouldn't even call him an officer, but that guy went outside of his training to do what he
Mm,
did. So
mm,
the training that's implemented, and like I said, during my 15 years was good training. It taught you what to do. It taught you what not to do. But it's
mm,
the decisions of those officers at the moment.
mm,
And a lot of stuff, that decision that officer made that day or that guy made that day was not correct. We know that, right? But
mm,
and there's many, like I said earlier, there's so many different scenarios that come into play with the people that you're dealing with.
mm.
It's and some of those decisions on officers' parts have to be split second.
Right.
And I know, as far as using your firearm versus taser versus mace,
Mm,
sometimes that stuff can escalate so fast, and you just hope that your training is kicked in enough
mm,
to make the right decision, and I know a couple of years ago, maybe it's been longer than that now, some representatives from the media went into one of those. A lot of police academies, a lot of larger departments have those simulators
mm,
to put you in different scenarios, and they even had problems. The media did, whether to say, "Hey, is that a gun in his hand or is that a phone in his hand?"
yeah.
And it's those type of decisions, and you just hope if you're put in that situation that you make the right decision. And
Right.
so I guess going to her question, I mean, the training that's implemented now is academy do train officers make decisions that you hope that they're early on in their career that they've had influences on them to do the right thing. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. Um, so where do you think the whole, because I didn't know that the whole knee on the neck thing was part of training. So if it's not, where do you think where they getting it from? Where does that move come from? Somebody
That,
asked, is it a military tactic? Somebody asked.
that was his decision to do that. In law enforcement, you know, you're the only time you would, for instance, if you talk about batons, collapsible batons now, um,
Mm-hmm.
to strike someone in the head or neck, that's considered life threatening, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be considered on the same lines as you shooting somebody. So, you know, to put your knee on someone's neck is fatal. I mean, you're on the spinal cord. Of course, you're cutting the air off from the person breathing, right? So that is not taught. No, that is something that he did. No,
Right.
no one taught him to, and that's why he's in the situation he's in now, right?
Yeah.
He's going to get prosecuted.
Right. Right.
So
And I mean, and the reason I asked, man, is because I've seen other videos of officers putting their knee on somebody's neck. So that's why I thought it was a part of training, to be honest.
now,
Now, of course, I'm watching this in media, and media is going to take everything bad and put out there. I was just genuinely trying to get to the bottom of like, where did the knee come
well, the
from?
knee should be in between the shoulder blades. All right. So
Oh,
if some,
on
yeah,
the
right,
shoulder.
not on the neck, no.
Okay.
And now, if somebody's fighting, could the knee slide up? Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, there's so many scenarios that people, if you're having to physically restrain somebody,
Mm-hmm.
on the ground trying to get them handcuffed,
Mm-hmm.
you do put a knee in somebody's in their back, to
Mm-hmm.
try to get their hands back around to get them handcuffed. And if someone's fighting you and trying to turn over or whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
know, if the knee slides up to the neck, so be it. But it needs, you need to readjust or, forever, whatever the situation you're in. But that's not something that's taught. No, it needs to
Right.
be on the back, trying to hold the person down to restrain them that way.
Right. And then you only need to do those tactics until you get them cuffed, right? Is that how it goes?
That's correct. Once a person's handcuffed, it's over.
Okay.
Um, and that's where training comes in again, right? Training comes in at this point. So, once the subject's handcuffed, um, everything should de-escalate. You know, you,
Mm-hmm.
you need to flip the switch
Mm-hmm.
to back to communication mode.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to that person
Mm-hmm.
and let them know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. No more, no more anything but
Right.
communication at that point.
Right. Man, what do you, I mean, and I know some of these are new questions, man, but see that's why I don't even like to really write questions down before I do these interviews, man, because I'm kind of a person like I like to wing stuff, do it real time. Um, in your opinion, what do you think can be done, if anything, at this point to bridge the relationship between police officers and the community? Just as a whole, man.
During my time, that subject came up many times.
Yeah.
This is not something new. It's come up many times, and I know within the city of Birmingham and even at Hoover, I mean, it all goes back to the word communication. I mean, you've got to get out in these communities and talk to people. Now, are you still going to have people doing things they're not supposed to? Yes, absolutely. You're going to
Mhm.
have people who don't want to talk to you. Yes, absolutely. But your biggest goal is to get out and to communicate, and that's the only way that the gap's going to get bridged. That's it. I mean,
Yeah.
if people don't talk about it, if people don't, if they don't, meet their local law enforcement officer, Birmingham, the city, they need to realize how fortunate they are. They have an officer assigned just to their neighborhood every day, every day. And a lot of people don't have that in Alabama, really.
Uh,
They have this, and the majority of the time, it's the same person every day, same person.
oh, really?
So
Wow.
every day, yep, that person's assigned to that beat or that community. And, you know, the guy that I trained with early on, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knew him. And,
There
that
was
helped me get,
that thing going on, wasn't it?
that's it. And, yeah, if he knew he knew if somebody didn't go to court, he knew, where they were going to be hiding. He knew, if this lady was on, he knew who to call to look for. I mean, he knew everybody. And if people needed something, they would call his cell phone. Back then, in 2000, to have a cell phone, it was, 50 minutes, you're going to pay $300, you know? So he, I was like, man,
Hey,
how long
call
you
me
talking
back
about?
after 8 of my minutes are free.
Yeah. Yeah. So people, I just remember, I didn't have a cell phone hardly, I had one in 2000, but I didn't use it. But, I just remember people calling him saying, hey, can you please ride by my house? It's just communication, and, and I think it's important for the community to know exactly what law enforcement does, what they have to deal with, because at the end of the day, we're all human,
Right.
and we all leave and go home to our families. We all go to the beach and we all go out to eat. And, it's important for the people to know their law enforcement individually. I mean, ask them questions. You got kids, your kids play baseball, your kids play golf, whatever. I mean, it's I know people forget that, and in situations like George Floyd, hurts the good people,
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't, I knew when that happened, I knew that, I have good friends, and because they want to go home after 8 hours. They don't want to have to work 16 hours. They want to go home because their kids got baseball practice or basketball practice or whatever.
Right.
And and those incidents happen, and unfortunately, people have to do, deal with the repercussions. So
Right. Right.
I kind of got way off topic, but
No, dude, you didn't. Like I said, this is a casual conversation. That's why they're so good, man. Is because it's not scripted. We're just having a conversation. It's just other people and happen to see it online live. But I
right.
love what you said, man, right there where you said at the end of the day, we're all people. We all got families. We all got kids that we want to go home to. All right. Uh, and even though it's something unfortunately that happened to George Floyd, and a lot of Black people have gotten killed, uh, I'm more about getting to the root of the problem. You know what I'm saying? So it can be fixed. Period. All right.
Yeah.
And in my blended lines family, no, man, it's all about love in our group, respect. You come in there with that hate and stuff, it don't fly in my group, man. Like you go get booted out real quick. All right. And so that's what I want to do, man, is, it's not going to happen overnight. We know that, racism is not going to go away overnight. And racism is this, man, because we were friends. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure I told you about some of the stuff that I went through as a Black person. I was always at your house, but I got to see how your family raised you. Your mom, we Facebook friends. We still cool. She cooked dinner for me, and I'm gonna be honest, man. I didn't have a lot of white friends whose parents was cooking dinner for me, bro. So for me, it was like, wow, Clark mom, cool, man. She cooked me dinner, and she white. I mean, that's the mentality.
Hey, I can remember, going back. I don't remember how long ago this was, but you were talking about you took your son. You guys went on a field trip to a cotton farm, I believe.
Yeah,
and you were telling me how emotional you were, and that hit something home with me, man. I got to thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I educated my son, at that time,
Wow.
so I remember stuff, man. I just remember you talking to me about that.
Yeah, dude, I forgot all about that, man. But man, kudos,
I don't forget, man.
Kudos to you for talking to your son, man, because that's what my voice is to, for parents is to look, talk to these kids, man. Now, I don't tell anybody how to parent because it's different for everybody because each kid is different.
Right.
But for my kids, I don't sugarcoat anything and I just give it to them raw. And the reason I do that is because I know the world isn't going to sugarcoat it. So I want to go ahead and prepare them for the world. So I talked to Cam about racism at 7, and I told him about how daddy was called a nigger like every other day growing up. And I kept it raw with him. But at the same time, I taught it in a way to where we are going to love others, and you can't just judge a whole race of people because some other people do bad things. All right. And I think if we can get all parents of all races just talking about race with these kids at an early age, man, I think that'll kind of help with alleviating or bridging that gap in the future. So what's your son's take on racism? Does he understand it? Because I know when I told Cam, he didn't really get it, man. He couldn't understand the hate part, which I don't even understand that, and I'm 42. But does your son understand what racism is, you think?
He don't. I don't think he does. I mean, because right now, I mean, he sees everybody the same, you know. And don't you wish you could keep? Don't you wish you could keep that innocence all the way, you know, all the way up? Uh,
No.
and that's what I got at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, he don't understand. He does see the news, you know, and he knows that Dad was in law enforcement, and he don't understand. You
Yeah.
know, we do talk about it. I did talk to him about the George Floyd incident
Good.
and how that guy, you know, he's not a policeman. You know, he
Right.
should never be labeled as one. And I said, hey, Daddy did not, you know, because he saw that and started linking that back to policemen and knew I was a policeman. So, you know,
Wow.
I had to sit down and tell him, hey, you know, do you understand where I was going with it? Maybe. You know, he's very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Thinks he's smarter than me plenty of times, but you know, it's just it was a difficult conversation to have with him. To hey, listen, you know that Daddy's friends, you know all the people I hang out with, you know that they're not like this, you know,
Right.
and so you know that was a conversation I had to have with him. But
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I do talk to him about it, but like I said, you know, he don't see the at least in our community, he's got plenty of black friends, and he don't understand, like
Right.
why things are happening this way, and he will one day, and we'll have to have another talk. But
Right.
you know, right now I don't, you know, like you said, I don't. He don't understand the hate thing, and
Yeah.
you know, he don't understand why people are saying what they say. So
Right. Right. Well, look,
yeah,
man, tell him I don't either, man. And I'm 42 and I probably never understand it, man.
right.
But look, man, we coming up on the end, man. I told you these interviews, they go quick, but man, look, you gave some really good wisdom, man. And the reason why I wanted to do this was because I just, I want people to see both sides, man. There's always two sides, right? Do I believe there are bad cops out there? Yes. Do I believe there are good cops out there? Absolutely. You're one of them or was one of them. And it sounds like, to sum it all up, man, relationships and how you talk to people, man, it starts there. Because I could so see, knowing how I am, I can tell you now, if I was a cop and I had a beat with the same people, man, I know them people names, their kids, their families. We'd be a family when I come around,
Right.
I treat everybody with respect and treat everybody like how I want to be treated. So
That's the key word. You know, how you want to be treated is the key word. That's right.
yeah. And well, look, we got the users on here. They're looking, man. They're saying, thank you, Clark. Thank you for your service and, and for your protection in Hoover and Birmingham. I appreciate you, bro. You always been a good dude, man. You really have always been a good friend, awesome father. I have to talk to your wife about being a good husband or not. I got to call and ask her for. I'm just messing with you,
Well, hey,
man.
let me get my house built before you ask me any questions about that. So
Yeah, you don't want to ask no questions right now, bro. I've been down that road. Trust me. Hey, bro, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time, bro. Give me some.
Yeah, man. Hey,
All
I
right.
hope it was worth. Hope I gave you what you needed, man. I hope everybody
Yeah.
enjoyed it too. So
Yeah, you did, man. You were great, man. And the Blended Lines family appreciate you too, man. Great insight, great interview, man. All right.
good deal, man. Thanks, Cliff.
All right, man. Have a good one. Be safe. Stay away from that COVID.
Hey, man, I'm in the kitchen working, brother. Can't get no safer than this, right?
All right, man. Take care, bro.
See you, man.
All right, bud.